All right, how's it going, everyone? This is Flash coming at you with my second Yahoo Fantasy Football Pro League draft. So you're probably wondering why the audio isn't synced up to Loom here, and the reason why is because I recorded thinking that the audio was working, that my voice is being picked up, and it turns out technical issues with Loom, and didn't pick up my voice at all. So I'm having to record this in recap style. So thank you for bearing with me on that. Next time, should be up and working just fine. So unfortunately with this draft, as you can see, 10th and last pick. Not ideal. My first inclination was I'm not going to win this league. Very few teams can recover from that pick. You get the turn, but then you're also exposed to long position runs. You rarely get the players you want. You're forced to reach on them. So really, while there can be some advantages to getting a turn, unless you get a first or last pick, you're not going to get the turn. Chances are you're not going to get a lot of your cute guys, and you're going to have to strategize and reach on guys so that you can guarantee that you lock them in, and that turned out to be the case here. So now, much has changed in the past week. I'm recording these every Saturday between now and the start of the year. Because I got the 10th pick, I immediately thought I'm going to try no RB theory. Not going to go with Gordon. Too risky right now. There's too much that is uncertain. Too many unknowns in the equation. So once I found out that Jones was available at 10, I had him pegged at 8 or 9 in a lot of my mocks. So I decided that I would go with Jones. As you'll see here, the question I had was what wide receiver to take next, or do I even go Connor? Again, Gordon was off the table. Chubb, to me, ranked too high on Yahoo, so it was really down between, after picking Jones, it was really down to Thomas or Connor or Beckham. And I was torn here because I believe Thomas despite Yahoo ranking him at 13, I really believe he's going to finish with more fantasy points this year than Odell. I know Odell's a popular pick. There's a lot of hype surrounding him. But I believe that, Breeze, even though there's going to be some regression, I believe the gap between Michael Thomas and the Saints' number 2 and number 3 receivers are much greater than the gap between Beckham and, say, Landry, and then the Browns' 3rd and 4th receivers. Again, you can't go by the projected fantasy points. You kind of have to make a gut pick. And since I follow Jake Seeley pretty closely, I know that he had ranked Michael Thomas ahead of Beckham. Beckham can either go one of two ways. He could really explode and just smash, or he can be more of a disappointment like he has been with the Giants. Now, I know that the Giants and the Browns are in different situations, and Mayfield is clearly an upgrade over any year of Eli the past several years. But there's going to be adjustments, and there might be a couple weeks early on that he grossly performs below standard. So I went Thomas. All right, so 3rd pick, I'm still thinking wide receiver. Henry's there, but I think Henry is overhyped. He had gotten hurt. You could see the question mark tag. I know that he had a walking boot, and then the news had just come out. And Green, I didn't know at the time, but he also was struggling with an injury. So this was kind of a key pick, because if I went Henry or Green, I would have mispicked, clearly, because I think that both are going to perform under their ADP. But Cooper, with the different bye week, it was between Cooper or Thielen. I went Cooper because I really think he's found a home in Dallas, and whatever issues plagued him in Oakland, it's just a different scene, and he really did well for the Cowboys. I think he's a great wide receiver 3 to have. He's for some drafts, or drafters, I should say, who are going RB heavy early. Cooper's is a wide receiver 1, so when you get him a wide receiver 3, I essentially was saying I'm going to go against the grain. I didn't realize at this time just how much everyone was going super early on running backs across the board, although I started to kind of get an inclination by this point. So while I wanted to go Thielen or Diggs. I kind of was like, I don't know. It's just I don't want to get in a coin flip between what Viking to choose. So I went Gurley, and it was at this point that I decided I was going to draft Gurley and then prioritize Darrell Henderson in the late mid rounds to handcuff with him. Because I really believe that the tandem of Henderson and Gurley could be a solid wide receiver one combo with the insurance baked in. So at this point, because I drafted Jones and Thomas, both have bye weeks of 9, I knew that Rams wide receivers were off the table, and same with Bengals. I couldn't draft Boyd, for instance, or Kupp, Cooks. I really wanted Mike Williams at this point. Drake was on my radar, but unfortunately Drake would go. I'm surprised Montgomery went early. Ingram went early. So, sorry, I know I got a little bit ahead of myself here, but as I'm talking about in the video just about now, there's certain tight ends that rounds 5, 6, 7 you really need to consider, in my opinion. Unless you want to wait till the end and try and get yourself a Vance McDonald type, go Howard or Henry. Think of the H's, and I was bummed to get Drake there. That I didn't get Drake. So, because I didn't, I would have gone Kooks if it weren't for the bye situation, so I had to think, who else? Ridley, I think he's overvalued at this point. Mike Williams, in hindsight, I could have drafted him here, but I thought that, for some reason, I thought that I could get him 2 rounds after, because we were at the last pick of round 5, and I was thinking I can get him at 7, and as you'll see, I was really taking my time because I knew I needed another running back the way things were going. So the clock is running. I'm trying to decide between Lindsey and Carson at this point. I'm pretty sure at this point, due to the clock running down, I just went ahead and grabbed Howard because I knew I wouldn't be able to get him or Henry with the after the position run coming up after this pick right here. So I thought about Williams, but I realized it was better to either go Carson and then pick up Penny later on, or go Lindsey and pick up Freeman later on. So as you'll see, I'm really I'm really considering a bunch of different things. Lindsey seemed a little low. Yahoo has him at 61. I think he's in the 50s somewhere. I don't think he's in the 60s, or should be going that late. 40s maybe too early though. First draft that I did last Saturday, he went like pick 37, 38. I thought that was way too early. So for me, getting him at 51 seemed reasonable, and the narrative just wasn't my friend at this point. I would have preferred taking Lindsey in the back half of the 50s, but I didn't have a pick there. So already the bye week was a concern. I needed a running back in the first 4 picks, as it turned out. Because Gurley is not he's going to straddle that 1-2 borderline. You can make a case that Gurley's a running back 1. And so I ensured that on my roster at this point, I have 2 wide receiver 1s and a running back 1. Depending how you view the Gurley-Henderson combination in tandem. This is like for me, I was thinking 2017. You drafted Charles, I think, that year, and then you got, I forget if it was Charles or where, but Kareem Hunt was the handcuff you targeted late in that draft, and if you drafted Hunt, you probably won your league. So that's why I really wanted to focus on Henderson here. So this is another bummer coming up here. Drake, I missed out on Drake in the previous round. Williams almost falls in my lap, coming up on pick 70 here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to make it, so once Mike goes, I already had Robbie Anderson on a different team, my first team, so and same with Kirk. So at this point, I'm like, I'm going to get, I was only 1 pick away too. If I didn't get Williams, I was going to go Landry, and that ended up what happened, because Kupp was off the table. Jeffrey, I'm only going to pick up Jeffrey if we're like in the 80s, 90s, or beyond. Ebron, I think, is due for some negative regression. Fuller's an injury risk. So I don't know if you could tell. what my lips are saying here, but once Williams went off the board, I was like, I hate this draft. Because at this point, I'm a little nervous about. I'm confident in my team, but the construction of it is starting to get to me. I'm concerned once I get to week 9, like, will I have enough players on my bench to fill in so that I don't have a lost week? Because I'm already thinking I'm down a week the way things are going. So in my quarterback projections, I have Newton ahead of Ryan, but I actually draft Ryan here right at his ATP just because I really wanted to pair him with Jones. I know that people say he is great every other year, and so he's due for an off year. There may be some negative regression, but I still think that if Jones, even if he has only 5-6 touchdowns all year, he could still be completely in line for an outstanding total yard season, and Matt Ryan's going to be throwing him the ball, barring injury. So having that Ryan Jones tandem, even though it's more of a DFS tactic to stack, I don't think the gap between Ryan and any other quarterbacks it's going to be that great. Personally, I would have liked to have waited. If there's one mistake, there's probably a couple of mistakes you could find in this in my roster construction in this draft. Ryan didn't need to take a quarterback that early. I get that. I was just worried about Ryan going, and I shouldn't have been so worried to not have that pairing. Maybe I could have gotten Winston later on. I might have changed up a little bit. But this is the part of the draft that's a little murky for me personally, because you're looking for upside, but the upside starts to get capped a little bit. A lot of shaky situations and a lot of wide receivers you could afford to wait on, like Sutton. He might do well this year and perform beyond his ADP, but you can get him at a discount later on. So all these things are swirling in your mind. Here's another thing that I went for. At this point, I'm not a big fan of Fitz. I think the Cardinals are going to have a better team this year. But I was just looking for receiver depth where I could get off that week 9, or 8. And I already had Landry at 7, so I'm taking my bye weeks in consideration. I didn't draft a kicker on my first team, and I believe that that's a bold strat worth considering this year. But I was just kind of in a not contrarian, but just in more of a traditional conservative point. I often found myself on the other side of where I wanted to be with this draft. I picked Tucker because I wanted consistency at a special teams position. I didn't have to worry about that. And I know kickers should be the least of your concerns, but Tucker is one of those guys that could get you double-digit points on a consistent basis. He's that good. He's by far the best kicker, and he can sneakily carry you on off weeks, I feel like. I've seen kickers bail you out of jams, but there's only like 1, 2, or 3 each year that can do it consistently. Outside of that, it's a crapshoot. I get that. I get why people don't take kickers. And same thing here with the defense. I think getting Chargers at 130 was actually not a bad move. So I really thought that having a top 1 or 2 kicker and then a top 5 defense, some good intangibles for my team. I also didn't mention I got Freeman and Henderson. I got the handcuffs to Lindsey and Gurley, so that's great. So if Gurley or Lindsey go down, I'm in good shape. And again, it's just it's good to build depth. You can build depth a number of different ways. You can obviously target upside in connection with different bye weeks, but some people would say bye weeks is overrated. And if you could get a premium handcuff in the later rounds, that the upside, while baked into the earlier pick, if an injury situation comes into play and you have a Hunt 2.0, as I mentioned earlier, that can be a huge breaker for us. So for me, I've set up some insurance depth. If Gurley and Lindsey go down, I'm not going to sweat it. So running back's clearly my weak point on this team, but hopefully the depth of receiver, we'll see if it carries me this year. And I got a quality tight end. So you look at it as I got 2 wide receiver ones, a wide receiver one. Howard is a top, however you slice it, he's a top 5 tight end. Whether he finishes 4th, 5th, maybe he finishes 6th, but I don't see Ingram out doing him this year unless Howard gets hurt. I might be able to trade down. I'm tempted to maybe see if I can go Winston instead of Ryan, and then maybe trade Landry and get some more wide receiving depth. This is a team that I feel like I'm going to have to make moves, but considering I was drafting at the last spot, and given just the narrative of this draft, so many wide receivers just going off really early, in some cases way too early, I don't think I did so bad. In fact, Yahoo ranked my draft a B+ and projected to rank third. I was considering Hill here, but figured I would just pick him up off the wire later if he does well early on. So we'll see. But maybe I make a 2-for-1 deal, open up a roster spot, and I get him. We'll see. So I wasn't a big fan of this team compared to the other one, but I feel like there's some promising elements where just some good quality in-season management, and this team could easily make the playoffs. So it just depends on your point of view and what strat you employ. I think going wide receiver heavy, if you get a pick at, say 8, 9, 10, or if you're in a 12 team, 11, 12, going wide receiver heavy is smart. But if you get the first 4 picks, it's pretty easy. I think the gray area this year is going to be picks 5, 6, and 7. Hopkins and Adams make sense, but I just think that Thomas and Jones both have the potential to outscore them. So, and Yahoo points projection, the tandem of Jones and Thomas projects to have the most fantasy points combined of any pairing wide receiver in the league, which is interesting. But again, that's Yahoo. It's just one metric. I use a composite. I check out a lot of different ones. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Recap, and I hope to do some more like this in the coming weeks. I'll catch you on the fry. Peace.